GT Countdown. The top 10 worst delays.
No matter how many games you're playing, there's always those 3 or 4 that you're not, and probably won't for a long, sad, frustrating time. Somewhere in that gem's development, its creators are probably going to have to say the D word at least once, but these 10 games felt almost eternally out of reach. By worst here, we're not just counting months or years, but emotional weight, measured in hearts broken, promises destroyed, and pre-orders canceled. And repurchased.
Number 10. Spore.
When Spore was first on the drawing boards around 2000, it was as much a high-minded experiment as a commercial computer game. Sim Everything, as it was referred to, was originally conceived as the Uber Sim game, allowing users to play God within their own model universe. The game that was eventually released in 2008 undoubtedly bears some of that DNA, but at least at the time, the back-to-back delays preceding its launch caused many an eager Galaxy builder to view its lofty aims a bit more cynically. The game officially debuted at E3 2005, set to release later that year. And so it went for 3 consecutive E3s. Spore finally came out in September of 2008, a few months after the creature creator gave prospective players an early taste. But it was quick to embroil itself in a new controversy to replace the delay drama. Much to the chagrin of large swaths of the audience, the game launched with secure ROM DRM protection. It opened a whole new can of worms for EA, but that's a story for another day. Suffice it to say that even after it came out, it was a few months before many consumers deemed Spore truly ready for prime time.
Number 9. Gran Turismo 5.
At E3 2006, Kazunori Yamauchi took the stage, saying that the wait between the launch of the PS2 and Gran Turismo 3 was too long, promising that the next GT would arrive soon after the PlayStation 3's launch. GT HD Concept and GT5 Prologue clearly attempted to fill a void, but news of the genuine article didn't come until November 2008, when a statement in a Spanish newspaper pledged that GT5 would arrive for Christmas in 2009. That date was reiterated at Gamescom 2009, but just weeks later, the Tokyo Game Show announcement pinned the game for March 2010. That forecast was abandoned in January, but at E3, an exact date was finally set. November 2nd, 2010 would mark the game's official US release. That is, until one more vague, last-minute delay came on October 13th. For weeks, Sony stuck to a murky holiday launch window, only to suddenly reveal on November 12th that Gran Turismo 5 would hit shelves November 24th, bringing relief to fans and a spate of late reviews in the process.
Number 8. Daikatana.
Daikatana isn't on this list purely because it endured especially long delays. It's based more upon the mountain of hype that the game's figurehead, John Romero, heaped upon it. Its initial release date was Christmas of 1997, but the team decided to move it over to the Quake 2 engine, and that's where the real disaster began. Once this decision was made, the new and completely unrealistic date of March of 1998 was announced. That day came and went, and months later, a huge chunk of the team left in November when it still wasn't complete. At that point, a release date of February 1999 was announced. It would be a full year after that before it would even think about sniffing store shelves. It was finally launched to scathing reviews in April 1999, but not after a launch party was held 4 months prior and an embarrassing ad was produced proclaiming that John Romero and Daikatana were going to make everyone their bitch. Here we are over a decade later, returning the favor.
Okay, right there!
Number 7. Perfect Dark.
GoldenEye kept all 4 controller ports on the Nintendo 64 connected for a long time, but with no hard drive or DLC, players were forced to shoot through the same maps over and over again. Having been stuck referencing 007 lore for a while, the team at Rare wanted to build its own brand and secret agent, immediately turning down Bond's next outing, Tomorrow Never Dies. But in the 3 years it took to make the explosively anticipated Perfect Dark, GoldenEye super agents Martin Hollis, David Doak, and Steve Ellis all abandoned the mission and defected to other projects. It didn't help the development time, that's for sure. With video game media being relatively small at the time, the updates came in trickles, making the wait for Perfect Dark feel like prolonged water torture. When it did finally come out, you needed the N64's RAM expansion just to access most of it.
Number 6. Doom 3.
In 2000, Doom's founding father John Carmack announced internally to team members at id Software that he wished to bring back the iconic first-person shooter. The news was met with apprehension. After all, it marked a 6-year gap in technology and the series was considered retired. Given the success of Return to Castle Wolfenstein, the plan to remake Doom moved forward, trudging at a snail's pace. The brief 2001 public unveiling only made the wait more difficult, as the visuals were far beyond what had been done prior. Primarily due to the new technology id Software implemented, Doom 3 missed its projected 2003 window, causing development to drag on until its PC release in mid-2004.
Number 5. The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess.
While it might not have been the longest delay, the year-long pushback of Link's last console adventure hit fans hard because the game was essentially complete. Originally touted as one of the last marquee titles to grace the fading GameCube, Nintendo's timing in announcing the delay of the highly anticipated game mere months away from release was hard to accept. A lengthy media blackout followed, accompanied by rumors Twilight Princess was being moved to Nintendo's upcoming Wii. Reggie finally broke the news at E3 2006 that Twilight Princess wouldn't be coming out until the following holiday season, and it would be released for both Wii and GameCube. Fans, many of which ultimately preferred the GameCube version anyway, were not pleased.
Number 4. Half-Life 2.
In the weeks leading up to September 30th, 2003, speculation and scuttlebutt as to the precise cause of Half-Life 2's delays were all over the place. Was the then new Steam delivery system to blame? Was it all Vivendi's fault? After its stunning unveiling at that year's E3, pining fans were just looking for a scapegoat. They'd ultimately have to wait more than a year till the game saw the light of day.
Gordon Freeman! I expected more warning.
Yeah, you and me both, Doc.
The fact that an early version leaked in 2003 probably didn't help things. In any event, once Half-Life 2 finally came out in November, all was forgotten, once the early bugs were squashed anyway. Half-Life 2 made an indelible impact on the industry, and it remains an integral part of the first-person shooter canon.
Number 3. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
The story of Ocarina of Time's development is almost as interesting as that of Twilight Princess. The game was originally created as the killer app for Nintendo's proposed disc-based, write-friendly add-on, the 64DD. When Nintendo decided to delay it, it was also decided to move Ocarina of Time to a regular cartridge-based release. It took 3 years from the game being announced to actually hitting stores, which may not seem that long today, but back then, the 3-year development cycle was unheard of. Meanwhile, fans hung on every word written in gaming mags as the delays wore on. By the time it was released in November of 1998, it seemed almost impossible for it to live up to expectations. Yet it still stands as one of the highest reviewed games of all time.
Number 2. Too Human.
Starting as a fever dream in 1999, Too Human was originally going to span a whopping 4 CD-ROMs on the original PlayStation, before moving to the conceptual incubator phase on the GameCube after developer Silicon Knights became a second-party Nintendo darling. It switched partners once again as another generation came into being, with Microsoft and the Xbox 360 finally giving form to the Valhalla techno dungeon crawl that Too Human ended up being in 2008. Nearly a decade and 3 systems after its initial unveiling, Too Human's promise of an epic Norse RPG wasn't Baldur's Gate, just Baldur's Lake.
Number 1. Duke Nukem Forever.
Is there really any other choice for number 1? The most aptly titled game in the history of the industry was 14 years in the making. In some form or another, the game has been in development only a few years less than many of the people who will end up playing it have been alive. Those of you who have been waiting for it since it was announced back in 1997, we won't blame you for lack of faith. The promise of Duke Nukem Forever traveled through the eras and hardware generations, mocked those who believed, and hopped from engine to engine as the years went by. It exhausted sources of funding time and again, but never managed to truly die. The sacking of the team at 3D Realms in 2009 really felt like the final nail in the coffin, but 2K and Gearbox finished what 3D Realms began all those years ago. And 99% of other games would have never made the trek and come out in one piece, making it the worst video game delay of all time.
Time to stop pissing around and get this big guy back into action.